from the Secretary of Defense, again, also Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, saying the U.S. military actually carried out another strike on a boat that he says was carrying drugs in the eastern Pacific Ocean, killing 4 people aboard the vessel. The Trump administration has been conduct drug cartels in the waters off South America. Hegseth, who's been traveling in Japan and Malaysia, said in a social media post that intelligence determined the craft was, quote, transiting along a known narco trafficking route and carrying narcotics, end quote. He said the strike was conducted in international waters and no U.S. forces were harmed. Now, I do want to show you the video because you can see the image there on the left-hand side of your screen. But as we pop it up full for you here on Live Now from Fox, you can actually watch it in motion as you see essentially a boat exploding into flames and smoke. That was posted by Secretary Hegseth. The Trump administration has been conducting a nearly 2-month campaign in the region. President Trump justifying the attacks on the boats as a necessary escalation to stem the flow of drugs into the U.S., to essentially keep those drugs from coming in. He's asserted the U.S. is engaged in a, quote, armed conflict with drug cartels, relying on the same legal authority that was used by the Bush administration when it declared a war on terrorism after the September 11th attacks. Again, this video coming in here from Secretary.
Okay. The boat wasn't moving. So what you're visiting is like the latest strike. We have estimated, I think we've killed, well, dozens of people, claiming these speedboats are narco traffickers with targeting the United States, and that we are conducting strikes, military strikes against a known terrorist group, narco-terrorist group, that is a danger to the United States. That's the legal justification. That is a 4-engine speedboat that did not have extra tanks. How much you guys driven around speedboats? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. It's not going to reach the United States of America 4,000 miles away or more. Okay? It's just not. They're using B-1 bombers to go after these guys. We don't know who they are. There's no judicial process. There's no legal process. There's no declaration of war. And if you heard a key thing at the end there, President Trump and Hegseth are justifying this in the same sense of what George Bush did with the war on terror after 9/11. After 9/11, when we were attacked by an international terrorist group called Al-Qaeda from Afghanistan that killed thousands of Americans, over 2,000 Americans on our soil, in a direct attack on our soil, a direct attack on our soil. Look, I don't like drugs. I'm against drug cartels. I mean, I'm not here to, criminals should be arrested and prosecuted and thrown in jail. I am a passionate supporter of the United States Constitution, period. And see, what the Republicans are trying to do all the time for people like you and me who watch this show is say that we're soft on crime. I'm not soft on crime. I'm hard as nails. I'm tough on the Constitution. I'm tough on the Constitution. You could be tough on the Constitution and still be tough on crime. Okay? Don't let them paint us in this picture. And that's what we have to understand. So what's happening right now is that illegal acts, clearly illegal acts, are being conducted in our names, the United States military, with all this bullshit, them putting out these statements about how it's really about, oh, it's really about protecting the United States. These are international terrorists. They're not threatening the actual United States. Don't buy it for 1 second, folks, okay? They're not. It's not a threat to the United States. But here's what's shocking. As of this morning, this story in the Miami Herald, okay? This story in the Miami Herald talking about U.S. is poised to strike military targets in Venezuela in an escalation against the Maduro regime. You read the story, it goes on to say that what's going on here is that they are declaring that Maduro is the head of the drug cartels and his regime, which may or may not be true. I don't know. They're not showing us the intelligence, but they're claiming that Maduro is running a cartel and therefore his military targetry. Now, look, I'm not going to dedicate an entire show to discussing why attacking a foreign country with just bomb strikes and thinking we're going to win a war that way. Or don't worry, folks. Look, you guys, don't worry. Once we behead the government there, the good people are going to rise up and over the government. We won't have to do anything. We won't have to occupy it. Don't worry. It's a simple decapitation. We did this in Afghanistan, and look how that worked out. Once we got rid of the government, things were fine. What about Iraq? I was there in 2003. We went to Iraq. It was gonna be super easy. We always sent a couple of divisions in. We didn't need a bunch because we're just gonna take out the government. And don't worry, there was a government in waiting. It was gonna come in and take over for us. We were gonna be out of there in no time. The longest wars in American history started with an idiot in the White House saying it was just gonna be easy to do. And here we are. Here we are. So let's circle back. Let's circle back to why we talk about this on Democracy, our show, which, by the way, I appreciate you guys being here. It is, I am Fred Wellman, as a little open. Let's look at this bit. So this started, in my opinion, back in February, on the first week that Pete Hegseth, the try-hard failure of a man, became the Secretary of Defense. I won't use his preferred pronoun because he outlawed those at at the Department of Defense. They swiftly outlawed preferred pronouns and names. So even if he wants to be called Secretary of War, I have to respect his wishes and the law of his organization, and it's still the Secretary of Defense. So the Secretary of Defense fired the supple service chiefs, which everybody got mad about. But his real goal was to fire the lawyers. They fired all of the service's TJAGs, the Judge Advocate Generals. He fired because they weren't suited for the job. And what he says in this article is they weren't suited for the job because they weren't going to comply with the president's wishes. In other words, he thought the lawyers were in the way. And this is something he wrote in his book years ago, saying that the lawyers are getting in the way of the warriors, the war fighters. Flash forward, and here we are in October of 2025, and we're smoking boats with no judicial process and no knowledge publicly of who they are. Okay? And it goes on. Now we find out the commander of Southcom has retired. Suddenly. The man in charge of those strikes for 1 year in the job, which is usually a 2 to 4 year job, has retired early, 1 year into his job. And reports are it was over a clash of the discussion of these strikes. Okay? So he hasn't spoken yet, and I respect that. But I'd love to hear from him. And also this. Couple weeks ago, the one lawyer that they replaced the Air Force lawyer with, she's retiring too. So we do not have any Senate confirmed Judge Advocate Generals. Yes, the Senate and the Congress have stepped out of their jobs, right? It's their job to confirm these people for their jobs, and they haven't done that. Okay? So, as I always circle back to this, 3 branches of government, co-equal branches of government. So while the Defense Department and Trump administration are smoking people illegally, while they're killing people with very thin judicial process or legal justification, all the lawyers are gone that would stop them. And the Senate has sat by their hands and not said, where's the nominees? Where's the process? Who is doing this? And it's starting to wear thin. Look, there's a lot going on in the country right now, you guys know, but On Democracy is about the threats to our democracy. And I believe, as a 22-year Army veteran. So for the perspective, so you guys understand who I am, okay? Okay, so you understand who I am. I graduated from the United States Military Academy in 1987. I then went on to go to the Harvard Kennedy School and get a master's of public administration. I've studied military law. I had to as a cadet at West Point. I've studied as a commander at military schools. I had to as an officer. I know the military rules. I know the laws of war. I know the UCMJ. Our forces are conducting murder. They're killing people. It's murder. I was an officer. I was an aviator. I led Apache gun strikes. I led Apache strikes in Desert Storm, where I was the guy picking the targets for the Apaches to strike. I was the guy who was responsible for saying, that's a target and that's not a target. I take that job very, very responsibly. And I served, I believe, the best I could with the honor I could. In tough times. I went to war 4 times. And for me to sit here and watch these actions in our name, for our sons and daughters, mothers, fathers, brothers, to kill people without remorse or without recourse, and hear rumors that they're worried about their legal exposures is shocking to me. It's catching on. Here's Senator Mark Warner just yesterday in a press conference. So what happened finally was the Trump administration and the Secretary of Defense sent people over to brief what they call the Gang of 8. For those familiar, the Gang of 8 It's the leaders of the armed services committees of the two houses, House Armed Service Committee, and the intelligence committees, I believe. Yeah, Armed Service Committee and intelligence committees. They have clearances. They have top secret clearances. So you've got two Democrats, two or Democrat and Republican, each of these committees. There's 8 of them, the gang of 8 for the two houses and Senate and House. And they were briefed yesterday in a classified briefing. We already know, we found out from others that at the last second, Hegseth didn't let the lawyers go. So they weren't briefed by lawyers. Okay? Just intelligence people. This is Senator Warner, Mark Warner of Virginia, part of the Gang of 8.
Folks who wave their Constitution around, read the damn thing and then explain why you would sit through that briefing and not call foul. So I call on this administration to immediately provide not only the OLC opinion, but as well as the secret target list that was briefed. This ought to go to every senator, not Gang of 8, not just the Intelligence Committee members. Now that they have already broken the seal, everybody needs to be read in. That is what Americans deserve. That's what every senator deserves, not this cherry picking for political purposes. The country deserves better, and we'll see if anyone is willing to stand up and push back.
Right. The country deserves better. We deserve to know of the actions of our United States military being conducted in our name. It is a law that they are supposed to inform us, the American people, of the actions of our military that's being conducted in our name. I did that as a public affairs officer. My job, literally, my mission was to inform the American people of the activity of their military. Okay? And they're not. They're putting out these videos that are so cool and polished. Let's go back to that video, folks. The boat is sitting there with 4 engines in the middle of the international waters of the Pacific Ocean, so far away from us. We had to use long-range bombers to kill who knows who. We're just take the word of Pete Hegseth that they're criminals. Let's take Pete Hegseth at his word. They're criminals. I'm sorry, folks. The United States Constitution doesn't allow us to simply kill people who we designate as criminals. So don't tell me you love the Constitution, like Mark Warner said, waving it around. Oh, the Constitution, and then smoke people without any due process. Those are not the same. You can be tough on crime and even tougher on the Constitution. You don't get to pick. And that's what's happening in our name. So I wanted to do this show. I was rushing around and said, look, we got to talk about this because I saw Senator Warner this morning. I said, look, I got to get a guess. Thank God I found Major General Stephen Lepper, who is the former Deputy Judge Advocate General of the United States Air Force. And God bless him. I got hold of him and he said, hell yeah, I'll come on your show in 15 minutes, Fred. So we're very lucky to have him. I think we had some technical glitches. I already did this interview, but it's a great conversation about the legality. So I'm glad you're here. I know it's Halloween night, Halloween weekend. I hope you'll watch it now. Hopefully you'll watch over the weekend. This is an important conversation for us to have for the On Democracy, right? For the name of the show. This is about our democracy, folks. Don't let them paint you in a corner saying, oh, you're soft on crime because you're mad that we're smoking cartel members. No. I'm tough on the Constitution. And you can be both. And it infuriates me to no end that these men and these people are trying to point us into a corner saying it's okay to kill people without any recourse. And I'm not saying innocent. I don't know if they're innocent or guilty. We don't know. But I know they're human beings. And we have a responsibility to our fellow man to recognize their humanity, be them criminals or not, because that's literally baked into the system. Okay? So let's have a very tough conversation. I'm happy to have it. Of course, you got to talk about this Army Air Force weekend. So I got an Air Force general on the Army Air Force football weekend, but you got to do what you got to do. One has to suck it up sometimes to have experts. So I'm thrilled to have them. Again, I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy after Wellman. You're watching us live on Friday night or on the video later. I hope you'll catch this show. It's an important conversation to have, folks. Welcome to the show. Let's get on with it. Welcome. I am Fred Wellman. I'm still Fred Wellman. I was Fred Wellman 5 minutes ago when we first started talking about this thing. And now we're back. I am so excited to talk about this and aggravated. You saw in the intro, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Some really questionable legal things going on in the name of us Americans. And as I was getting ready for the show today, I was like, I got to talk to an expert. I don't want to go solo. And, as luck would have it, I got recommended to talk to Major General Stephen Lepper. Major General Lepper a hell of a career. Graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1979, which is fine. And before I let him on camera, it is Army Air Force Football Week. So it's just a coincidence that me, a West Point graduate, has an Air Force Academy graduate on. And I'm sure it's going to go fine. However, here's the thing. He then went on to get his Juris Doctors from Duke University, rising through the ranks until he actually was the deputy JAG of the United States Air Force before retiring. Those guys, they handle over 2,200 lawyers around the country, judge advocates, civilian attorneys, 14 enlisted paralegals. Quite a career. It's a pleasure and an honor to have him on. So let's get General Lepper onto the show. Welcome, sir. General Lepper, Steve, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you jumping on this. For perspective, everybody, I gave him 15 minutes notice. So thanks for joining us, sir.
My pleasure, Fred. Go Air Force, beat Army.
I knew you were going to open with that. I knew. So it's going to be a good weekend anyway. We got serious topics, but you'll find if people watch the show so they know how this goes, because I've had way too many Navy people on here and Air Force. I'll tell you a story though. I picked up my son one time from sleepover. He was about 12. And the kids, I said, how'd it go? And he said, well, it's a really good night, Dad. I said, what'd you guys do? He goes, well, we started playing that, like, what would it take thing. And the question was like, what would it take for your dad to disown you? And my son said, join the Air Force. And I was like, oh, he knows me. And so nonetheless, welcome, sir. Congratulations on your retirement. Of course, you're practicing law now in Florida, but you've been very open about discussions about what's going on in the Department of Defense. So, for perspective, I talked in the beginning of these boat strikes, of the fact they're not actually briefing Congress. Congress, of course, is completely absent on oversight right now. And as me, I was a public affairs officer and a pilot. I was a combat pilot. We were trained in the laws of war, rules of engagement, what was a reasonable target. I mean, there's just so much going on right now. For me, and I want to start here, is I can't help it going back to all the way back to February of this year when new Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth fired all of the JAG officers, the TJAGs, if you will, of the military service. And can you tell folks, for perspective from you as a former at that level, why that was so shocking and what that said to you at the time?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to be with you today. Yeah, that was a surprising event in the history of our military. As you said, Secretary Hegseth basically decapitated the JAG Corps of the military services by firing the Judge Advocates General. And although at the time he did it, which was on a Friday night, which is why we called it a Friday Night Massacre, later he made a couple of interviews. He made some comments in a couple of interviews that revealed the rationale for his firing these officers. And the rationale basically was that he didn't want lawyers standing in the way of military operations.
Right.
And so, I was concerned about that, as were many of my former and retired JAG colleagues. We all got together and we created what we called at the moment the JAG Emergency Committee. We felt this was an emergency that needed to be responded to. And so we started responding by putting together initially a white paper that pushed back on Secretary Hegseth's rationale for firing the TJAGs. You in your Army experience, I in my Air Force experience, know that military operations are actually enhanced when they exist within the legal guardrails that our U.S. law and international law provide. When we go outside those guardrails, we end up dropping bombs on people we shouldn't be dropping bombs on. We end up wasting a lot of effort on targets that gain us no military advantage at all. But when we stay within the guardrails, when we color within the lines, we end up making a more effective use of the weapons and the personnel that we have.
Yep. And in the end, also, I think the next part of that, especially as an aviator myself, and I had Apache helicopters during Desert Storm, we were taking out targets extensively. We were trained extensively under the rules of engagement. But there's a negative effect too. The wrong target can blow up on our face in a way of international, but also danger to our own troops and actually hurt our war effort. We're blowing up, protected targets. We're blowing up civilians who should be protected. And now we find ourselves, so flash forward, you guys are prescient, I think. And that must be hard. I mean, it must be hard for you. I know it's hard for me as a pilot, but as a lawyer, to know you were right. Let's be honest. I mean, so as we watch these targets being targeted, these boats that look, They're outboard motorboats. They're not gonna make it 4,000 miles in the United States, but they're blowing them up with the justification that they're speedboats, drug boats that are a threat to the United States. What do you think when you see it? Because they did use, I believe they used B-1 bombers in the strikes in the Pacific just recently. So they are using Air Force assets who currently doesn't have a TJAG, a confirmed TJAG, right? So we're in a situation where they're bombing targets that could be legally questionable, aren't they?
These strikes realized our worst fears. Our worst fear was that JAGs would no longer be at the table when military operations are being planned and executed. And these targets, these strikes, have all the hallmarks of JAGs not being there. If JAGs had been there to plan and execute these operations, I'm convinced that they would have told commanders that targeting drug boats does not constitute international armed conflict sufficient to warrant the application of military force.
Yeah.
And basically, what we have done now is declared war, no kidding war, against narco traffickers, who are people who we have traditionally regarded as criminals and against whom we have traditionally arrayed our law enforcement authorities and agencies.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it is shocking too. I mean, and then we saw the admiral, Southcom commander retired suddenly, right? So it does feel like maybe some of these leaders are seeing that they're being placed in a position of a criminal offense in a lot of ways. And then we heard a rumor that I don't know if you saw it. So there was a rumor that some of the leaders in the chain of command have been asking for like legal opinions to protect themselves from a criminal liability. And so it feels like, and I don't know if if you're talking to your colleagues still in service, there is an uncomfortable, that spidey, tingly sense amongst the troops, knowing that they're being placed in a position where they may be committing no shit war crimes, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, aren't we?
Well, what it would constitute if it's not a legitimate exercise of military power is murder. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And the UCMJ criminalizes murder just as federal and state law criminalize murder. So, yeah, without the protections that uh, the combatant privilege provides military personnel if they are in a legitimate armed conflict, then all of their acts are violations of criminal law.
Right, and international law. We could actually find US service members in international court, right? That there's no reason that the country like Venezuela couldn't actually take our troops to international court, couldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And that may be on the horizon.
It's terrifying. And I know you only have for a short time, so I really understand. I grabbed the general as he was getting ready for another meeting. I do want to circle back as I was getting ready. That you commented on Hegseth's speech at Quantico. And during that, he said that those who disagree with him, the president should do the honorable thing and resign. And you wrote that those of us, I mean, obviously, those of us who served would argue that honorable is a weird word for Pete Hegseth to use in any form. But you wrote, and I quote you, on one side is the honor and lawfulness with which our armed forces traditionally conducted military operations. On the other side is the immoral and lawless abyss into which our military risks falling if the role and rule of law are further eroded. Honor matters. Unfortunately, it's one word the Secretary said did not utter in Quantico. So when he uses that word, he doesn't understand it, does he? As we see his actions that we're discussing right now, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, he was focused on haircuts and physical fitness in his speech to 800 generals who, in their you know combined centuries of military experience, understand the need for haircuts and physical fitness. What he lost the opportunity to do is to talk about how we are an honorable profession. We have been an honorable profession. We are an honorable profession today, and we need to continue to cling to the honor that is the foundation of our profession. And when that is eroded, I believe it is being eroded today by the, let's face it, lawless acts that the military is being forced to engage in, then that honor is crumbling underneath our feet. And when that happens, then the military itself is at risk of being manipulated in ways that it otherwise would not, and being used in ways that, quite frankly, our founding fathers uh, uh, found abhorrent and actually constituted the reason why we separated from our British, uh, masters back in the 1700s.
And now we see, of course, they're talking about National Guard, this QRF, the National Guard, that is under the direct command of the Secretary of Defense. I'm not going to use the term he uses because it's not real. But as we talk about that, as we sit here, you talk about the Constitution, and I joke a lot, sir, online that we had a whole ass revolution about this, right? I mean, that was the thing, courting troops in our homes, using the king's troops to attack their citizens. Now we have news that they're talking about a QRF that's going to attack cities. I mean, there are echoes of our past that are impossible to ignore, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. I mean, who would have thought that we would establish quick response forces against our own citizens to our own cities? Those terms, those concepts are usually reserved for immediate deployment of troops to engage hotspots across the world outside the United States in order to protect the borders of the United States from enemies outside the U.S. Never thought I'd see the day that we would be talking about the enemies within, which is what the president talked about at Quantico to the assembled leaders of our military. And when you think about the idea of using the military against enemies within, I mean, it's really scary. It's a really scary proposition to think that at some point in the not too distant future, a QRF or something else that constitutes armed military personnel might be deployed to attack American citizens
Yeah,
who are going to be labeled as the enemy within.
right. And we're stretching the National Emergencies Act, which should have been fixed. We're stretching all these things to give power where it should have been checked a long time ago. I guess the final thing is, and I'll let you go, sir, I know you're busy, is I guess what frustrates me is, especially in the other role that I have, is it seems like Congress has been absent. We're not seeing the oversight. I mean, this is Congress's job, right? To check the executive, to check the armed services. I don't know if you ever testified. I wouldn't be surprised you did testify. It is probably for your nomination you had to testify. So do you feel like Congress could be doing? I mean, Congress should be doing more. I mean, this is within their power to check this.
Well, Congress can do more. And that little group of former and retired JAGs I talk about that gathered together after Secretary Hegseth fired the TJAGs, we've been actually putting together papers that we've sent over to Congress suggesting ways in which they can avoid and prevent some of the things that we're seeing on the horizon, some of the things that you and I just talked about. And if Congress takes up the challenge that we have put before them, they could reinforce those guardrails that the secretary destroyed when he fired the TJAGs. They could reinforce the legal limits of military use. They could ensure that our military won't be politicized. They could ensure that our military won't be on the streets of our cities when elections occur next year. There are a lot of things that they can do, not only to amend the laws that are currently on the books, but to create new ones that make it absolutely clear that what the president is trying to do with the military right now is not right.
Well, we're going to keep on pushing them because that's my frustration a lot of times. It's Article 1's been walked away from. We talk about the Constitution a lot in our business, that our former business, right? And oath to the Constitution. We've read the Constitution. It does feel like a big chunk of the Constitution is being ignored right now by the people who should be doing this right now, and they've just become a doormat for the executive power, which is out of reach. So, well, I know you've got another meeting. It's more important than this. I can't thank you enough for jumping on such short notice from a hotel with sketchy internet.
Well, actually, I'm in Colorado. We're moving into a house in Colorado, and these are my curtains.
Sorry about that. Didn't know where you were. So congratulations on the move. Good luck to you. I love moves are fun. And in the middle of that, to jump on board, I do appreciate it, sir. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Fred.
Good talking to you. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
You gotta love sketchy internet. That was a great conversation. I hope it came out okay for you guys at your end. This is you're going live. This is what you do. Yeah, it is. It's kind of hard to laugh. You guys know I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. But I have great frustration right now. Okay, we are facing a very critical moment in our country. There's no question about that. And look, I know a lot of people are scared. You guys know, I get it. I've seen you. I see your comments. I talk to a lot of folks, obviously, with the other thing I'm doing right now, of course, running for Congress. And I hear a lot of folks who are scared right now and they're nervous. And I talk to groups. I was asked during a speech last week, why is the military laying down for Trump right now? And I fought the gentleman ferociously in that decision, but I am getting nervous. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It is hard not to be nervous. When we do see these boats, I do believe we have crossed that Rubicon. There's a moment we have faced right now where when we're seeing strikes in international waters without any declaration of war, without any direct emergency threat to the United States. Look, Trump can say all he wants that this is a national emergency, that the drug cartels are a national emergency, but they're stretching the law so far. And Congress knows this. The doormat Congress, the Republican doormat Congress that's laying down for Trump and letting him wipe his feet on them instead of doing their jobs is shocking to me. I always come back to that. Look, folks, they elected Trump. They knew what they were getting. Okay. We know Trump after all these years. What's shocking to me in the last 9 months, 10 months, 9 months, is the fact that Congress has completely absconded from their duty. They've absconded from their duty. They've completely walked away from their duty in Article 1. They've walked away from doing the right thing. The duty they have in Article 1 of the Constitution to provide oversight of the executive branch. They simply are not. They are not. And that is incredibly dangerous. Even in Trump 1, there was some methodology of oversight provided. In this one, this Congress, this Republican-led Congress, has completely walked away. And there are illegal acts being done in our names with these fake national emergencies for terrorists, these fake national emergencies he just declares anything a national emergency. And now we face rumors of a national emergency around the elections that they've been stolen. That's what he's setting up, you guys. And how long will Congress allow that to go? I'm afraid that they might, but we will fight them. People like Major General retired Lepper and others, we will fight them. Those of us in this audience will fight them every way we can. But we know that they're trying to pull this on us, okay? So we're going to hold the feet accountable of the people who have the power to end this. And there are people. That's the thing. The courts, tricky. But the federal government does have oversight from the legislature. Will they do it? You are starting to see cracks. The fact they voted on to repeal the tariffs, the fact there is discussions of the boat strikes, there are cracks appearing. Republicans are getting uncomfortable. And at some point, they will recognize that they are party to illegal actions. Illegal, not just unethical, inappropriate, sketchy. They are party to illegal actions. And there are legal consequences for that, specifically impeachment and others. But we are facing a moment where people like Stephen Miller is really running things. Stephen Miller, an unelected bureaucrat, the thing they hate the most, right? Stephen Miller, the racist, bigoted, hateful man, is issuing orders from the White House. We know that. He said it. He even said, I have deployed troops or some crazy shit. Stephen Miller is not in the chain of command of the United States government, the United States military. He's an advisor to the president. He does not have a place to give orders. Okay? Neither is Russell Vought. They're doing this because Donald Trump has walked away from doing anything but building ballrooms and the Kennedy Center. And the United States Republican-led Congress, the doormat Congress, has let him run things. Hold them accountable. Throw them the fuck out. Throw them out. They're going to try and stop our election. They're going to try and stop our protests. They're going to stop anything they can. But we have voices. We have the power to elect people. Participate in the process, folks. It's what we could do right now. Participate in the process. Use your voice. There isn't a campaign on earth that doesn't need your help, even now, as we're wrapping up for the next elections. But use your voice. If you're in New Jersey and Virginia, you better damn vote. If you're in New York, you better damn vote next week, okay? If you've got local elections in the country, you better damn vote. And we will use our voices and hold our Republican representatives accountable. We will push our fellow Democrats to fight harder. You will elect people who will fight. Don't sit on your heels at this moment. Don't cave into the fear. That's my urgency to you. Do not give in to the fear that they want us to give into. I've given you a host of reasons in this show to have fear. Do not do it. Braver men and women before us have stood up to their governments. Braver men and women before us have done the least they can do. We have a moment to do the best we can. Do not hide from it. Do not allow people to say, oh man, I'm not political. Bullshit. We're all political now. Don't let them get away with that bullshit. Okay. You're all political. They're killing people. They're killing people. This isn't about tax policy. They're using our name, United States of America, to kill people that are very likely innocent. We know for a fact that people are being born builders. And even if they aren't, even if they are drug dealers, the worst narco drug dealers you can imagine, we are not by law allowed to go into international waters and simply smoke people with no process and no judicial process. That's against our own laws. And just because it's coming from a B-1 bomber doesn't make it legal. Just because Pete Hegseth called himself Secretary of War like some try-hard dork doesn't make it legal. Congress must act. Congress must act. If they won't, throw them out. Throw them out. That's your charge. Now, I know it's Halloween weekend. We've got a lot going on. But it is election day weekend too in a lot of parts of this country. Get out there and use your voices, folks. We can beat these people, but it's going to take all of us together. So I'm Fred Wellman. I had the Substack up. I took it down. That's what I do. That's where you can find out lots going on. I got to write a little bit there about the other stuff I'm doing. You can always follow me on all my social media channels at FP Wellman, of course. Follow my other work on other places. I just don't want to get in trouble with the FCC. But having said that, I appreciate all the support I've gotten from all of you and what we're doing. Believe we can win. Don't give in to the fear and the hatred. Believe. It's a scary night. It's Halloween. Don't be scared. Take heart. There's many of us. There's more of us who believe in this country than that are against it. We may have different angles on what that looks like, but I've had some incredible conversations the last month with people on both sides of the political divide who do believe in this country and are seeing what's happening. Let's open our arms and start listening to each other on that world, because we do agree on a lot. And we are in such a moment in our country. If we don't have people cross the lines with us, we will not win. So I urge you to have conversations, use your voice to be heard, and let's win. Let's take our country back from these, I'm going to say it, evil forces. There's no description I can't use that isn't going back to Stephen Miller being evil, Pete Hegseth being evil people. They want you to believe they're just doing their duty and they're trying to save us. But the actions of these men and women who are doing these acts against our citizens and foreign nationals illegally is nothing but evil. You cannot relish murder and be a good person. Even those of us who have served, those of us who have been forced by our duty to conduct such things, to kill, those who relish in it are not good people. Those who understand the weight of that responsibility are decent people doing their duty. We have crossed a line. Stephen Miller and these others, Pete Hegseth and his buddies, they relish the murder of people. You should be very wary of people who celebrate killing. Period. With that, I'm Fred Wellman. This is On the Mox with FP Wellman, right here in the Midas Touch Network every week of Friday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I appreciate your support as always. Keep up the fight. I'll be right here next week. We'll see you again. Thanks. Bye.